Join me as I try to recreate and taste some of the weirdly popular 80s foods that are making a comeback in 2025. If you're anything like me, you've got a soft spot for the nostalgia of 80s food. The bold flavors, the weird ingredients, and the sheer audacity of it all. From neon-colored cereals to forgotten fast food menus, it's amazing how much of our collective culinary consciousness is tied up in the decade of excess. And yet, as we moved into the 21st century, many of these beloved foods fell by the wayside, replaced by newer, trendier options. But 2025 is shaping up to be the year of the 80s food comeback, and I couldn't be more excited. One of the main reasons these foods fell out of favor was the shift towards healthier eating habits. As consumers became more conscious of what they were putting into their bodies, the processed snacks and sugary treats of the 80s started to look like relics of a bygone era. Add to that the rise of social media, and suddenly the Instagrammable farm-to-table aesthetic of modern food culture made the old-school 80s grub look, well, a little cringeworthy. But as the pendulum of food trends always seems to swing, we're seeing a renewed interest in the comfort foods of our youth. For one, there's a sense of nostalgia that comes with revisiting these foods. They evoke memories of childhood sleepovers, family road trips, and lazy summer afternoons. And let's be real, who doesn't love the unapologetic nostalgia of a Doritos Locos Tacos or a Surge-flavored soda? But there's also something to be said for the sheer novelty of these foods. In an era where dietary restrictions and wellness culture can make eating feel like a chore, the over-the-top excess of 80s food is a refreshing change of pace. In a world where food trends are often driven by social media, it's also worth noting that 80s foods are having a major moment on platforms like TikTok and Instagram. Whether it's a retro-themed food challenge or a meticulously curated hash foodie spread, 80s foods are once again at the forefront of the culinary conversation. And as our taste buds and our social feeds become increasingly intertwined, it's no surprise that these retro eats are making a comeback in a big way. Jell-O pudding pops, remember those? Those were the best. Okay, so I know what you're thinking. What specific 80s foods are making a comeback, and why do they still resonate with us today? Well, let's start with the aforementioned Jell-O pudding pops. These frozen treats were basically the epitome of 80s convenience food, all the fun of a pudding cup but on a stick. And yet, despite being discontinued in the early 2000s, they remain one of the most beloved snacks of our childhood. Another 80s staple making a comeback is Hi-C Ecto Cooler, the green-colored drink that was synonymous with Saturday morning cartoons and Ghostbusters fever. Fun fact, Hi-C Ecto Cooler was originally developed as a promotional tie-in for the Ghostbusters franchise, but its popularity extended far beyond the movie's shelf life. Today you can find retro-themed Hi-C Ecto Cooler merchandise and even limited edition re-releases of the drink itself. Speaking of limited edition releases, don't even get me started on the current state of retro candy. From Surge Soda to Crystal Pepsi, it seems like every month there's a new announcement about some beloved 80s treat being re-released or reimagined. And let's not forget about the rise of 80s-inspired snacks like Dunkaroos or SpaghettiOs flavored ice cream. But of all the 80s foods making a comeback, none has surprised me more than the humble McRib. This sweet and tangy BBQ sandwich was always a bit of an oddity, even back in the day. And yet, for some reason, it's developed a cult following in recent years, to the point where McDonald's has actually started releasing limited edition McRib merchandise. One of my personal favorite 80s foods making a comeback is Pop-Tarts S'mores. I mean, who wouldn't want to combine the gooey, chocolatey goodness of s'mores with the convenience of a toaster pastry? As a kid, I used to eat these by the boxful during summer campouts, and to this day, they remain one of my guilty pleasure snacks. So what does it say about our food culture that these retro treats are making a comeback? For one, I think it says that we're hungry for a sense of nostalgia and community, that we're willing to put aside our dietary concerns and indulge in a little bit of 80s excess. It also says that our tastes are cyclical, that what's old eventually becomes new again. Thanks for joining me on this culinary trip down memory lane. If you've got a favorite 80s food that you're dying to see make a comeback, let me know in the comments below. And if you want to explore more nostalgic trends, be sure to check out my video on 90s fashion making a comeback.